Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about David Dobrik because he has gotten himself into some drama once again. And I actually think this drama might even have more of an impact on his image than the controversy he got himself into last year, which sounds pretty crazy because he was obviously involved in some pretty serious stuff and he took a lot of heat. But I think this controversy might be even more serious because one of his best friends has turned on him, and it's somebody that has a lot of influence themselves, and it's somebody that people that are fans of David Dobrik respect a lot, and that's Jeff Wittek, who David Dobrik nearly killed a year or two ago when he was swinging him around on a crane, and the guy smashed into the crane and nearly died. Like, this guy got really messed up from it, and up until recently, it seemed like Jeff was still on David's team, and he would defend him, and he didn't have that much resentment towards him, which David definitely needed while he was going through all the Dom allegations last year and his whole cancellation, because that would have been a whole nother thing to deal with if Jeff was really coming after him and decided to sue him or something like that. So the reason I think that Jeff coming after him now is going to take more of a hit on his reputation than the controversy he dealt with last year is because last year the main people that really started that controversy were Ethan Klein and Trisha Paytas, who both don't really have the best reputation, and nobody outside of their fan base really takes them that seriously. And they did have two members of the Vlog Squad on their podcast to talk negatively about David, but they're two members that I don't think many people really care about. And they're two people that don't really have the best reputation themselves. Like Big Nick, he's kind of lost it. Most people just goof on him now. I don't think anybody takes him seriously. And Seth, he doesn't really have the best reputation himself. And he's best friends with the guy who allegedly essayed somebody, which is Dom. And that whole situation led to the big cancellation of David when that Insider article came out. And that obviously did have an impact on David's image, but overall, I don't really think it mattered that much. He's still got TV deals with Discovery Plus, and he still gets like millions of views. He's still one of the biggest influencers. And I think there are a few reasons why the article didn't have much of an impact on David. And I think one of the reasons why is because the reporter who wrote that article doesn't really have much credibility herself. She seems like she's trying way too hard to be an influencer or something, and she's friends with a bunch of YouTube tea channels, and even Ethan and Hila were criticizing her after that article came out. And another reason why I think David Dobrik didn't really take that much heat is because Ethan and Trisha were really the main people that started all this. And again, they're both out of control. Like, no one really trusts them outside of their fans. Everyone just looks at them as like just drama YouTubers, and those are not really the kind of people that you want breaking these kind of stories. And that was pretty obvious when Frenemies broke up, because then all the H3 fans were kind of questioning everything that Trisha said, and they're questioning some of her stories about David. So if you want to cancel somebody or criticize somebody, I don't think having Trisha Paytas cancel them is the way to go. So I feel like a lot of David Dobrik fans, they knew that Trisha was obviously crazy, no one can trust her, and Ethan, he just wants to get clout, and he's gonna agree with whatever Trisha says. And then when that article came out, it felt like that reporter was kind of looking for some fame herself. And then also, it seemed like she's going way too hard after David, because the whole article was basically about him, and the person that actually committed the essay, the alleged essay, really wasn't a main point in the article. It seemed like it was just all David Dobrik clickbait, and then also is behind like a paywall, and it just, I don't know, I don't think many David Dobrik fans took it that seriously. And also, just David Dobrik, he's at the point where he has so much of an influence, it's nearly impossible to cancel him. But I think if somebody could get people's opinions on David to change, it's probably Jeff Wittek, because I think a lot of David Dobrik fans probably have respect for him and they trust what he has to say. And David nearly killed the guy, and he just kind of let David off the hook. You know, he could have been a lot worse to him, and it seemed like he really tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. So I think if Jeff keeps going after David and keeps telling people that David really just doesn't give a shit about him and David hasn't really checked in on him, I think people's opinions could start to change, because this isn't just Ethan Klein or Trisha Paytas or some shitty reporter trying to take down David Dobrik for like pretty much just to get clout. This is David Dobrik's best friend, who David Dobrik nearly killed and now is just kind of ghosting him. Like, that's Jeff Wittek's big problem with David now. Apparently David hasn't really reached out to him, and Jeff's gone through his like 9th surgery or something like that. Like, if I were David, I would be with him every time he's getting surgery. Like, dude, you almost killed your best friend. You should be checking in on him every single day. And it seemed like Jeff gave him plenty of chances. It really seemed like he didn't want to call David out or criticize him or anything like that. Like, he stuck with him. He defended him right after it all happened. But it sounded like David's just really being a dick to him now. And this is kind of the main criticism and problem that people had with David. They felt like he didn't have that much respect for his friends, and he mostly just saw them as content or like people that he could use for entertainment. So Jeff coming out against him really gets people thinking about this again. And I think he could change a lot of people's minds. And I know Jeff said he was going to go on the H3 podcast later this week. So I'd imagine him and Ethan are just going to unleash on David and just rip him apart, which will probably get a lot of attention and people talking. But I think if you really want to cancel David, you got to think about like convincing his fans that David is a bad person. And I don't think going through H3 and Ethan Klein is the way to do that. I don't think David Dobrik fans really trust Ethan Klein that much or really care what he has to say. Like, when Ethan was trying to cancel David Dobrik last year, it didn't really seem like he was doing it to like cancel a bad person or to like really expose what was going on, even though he obviously did expose some stuff. With him and Trisha, it mostly felt like Trisha was doing it for revenge and she wanted to get back at David. She just hated him and would do whatever she could to take him down. And Ethan was just going with whatever Trisha was saying. And Ethan just seemed like he knew the more he talked about David and the more they kept going after him, the more views they would get. Like, I remember before they even started talking about David, I always hated David Dobrik. I was hoping somebody would start criticizing him. And then they started doing it and I'm like, all right, this is cool. I'm glad somebody's finally calling him out. And then eventually I'm just like, all right, this is Trisha Paytas doing this shit and Ethan Klein, and they're just going way overboard. And it seems like they're doing this just to be like, hey, we're breaking these stories, we're uncovering something. Like, it just seemed way over the top. It just seemed like they're doing it to be like, hey, we're good people, we're doing this for good reasons. And these two are not the ones that should be doing this kind of shit. Like, if you have Trisha Paytas on your podcast, you have no right to criticize anybody or cancel anybody. Like, that immediately destroys all your credibility. So I don't know if Jeff is going on the H3 podcast just to talk about David and talk shit about him and try to cancel him or whatever, or he's going on there maybe to criticize Ethan. But I don't know. It could be good. I just think it's interesting that he's going on there again because the first time didn't go so well. And also, I think if he's going on there to cancel David, it's probably not the best idea because he should know Ethan. Like, I don't think David Dobrik fans really pay attention to him. And if you want to cancel David Dobrik, believe it or not, you got to convince his fans that he's a bad person. And I think going on H3's podcast isn't really going to convince any of his fans. I honestly think it'd be a better strategy if Jeff just tried to do it himself or convince some other Vlog Squad members to start speaking out against David or something. I think going on the H3 podcast, I mean, we'll see how it goes. Maybe it will work out, but I think if you're going on there just to talk shit about David, it's really not going to do much. Like, people probably will talk about it and it'll make some headlines, but I don't think many people trust Ethan Klein that much or like him. Like, David Dobrik fans, I don't think they care what Ethan Klein has to say, even though they will listen to Jeff, I'm sure. But the fact that he's just going on Ethan's podcast is going to discredit him. Also, I think it's kind of weird that Ethan will even have him on the podcast and like try to act like he's friends with him, because before this, Ethan thought he was a terrible person because he thought he was the one that bought the girls alcohol that Dom allegedly essayed. So, I mean, a lot of H3 fans don't really like this guy, so I think it's kind of weird that Ethan will even have him on. But of course, Ethan will have him on because all Ethan cares about is getting views. And he knows if he has Jeff on, it'll get him a ton of views. Especially if Jeff starts talking shit about David, like, it'll make his whole podcast. Like, he's definitely so excited about this podcast. And I'm sure Ethan will easily convince all his brainwashed fans that Jeff's a good guy now and they should all trust him. I mean, it's hilarious how confused these people are. And Ethan probably even knows it. He's probably like, my fans will believe whatever. Like, Ethan could have Trisha back on the podcast tomorrow and everyone be like, oh, she's a good person now, even though they spent the last 8 months just tearing her apart. It's crazy. These people just cannot think for themselves. And some of them basically admit it. They say, whatever Ethan says, whatever he does, we support it. We'll agree with whatever he says. Like, these people are out of their fucking minds, but it's entertaining to watch. So that's about it for this video. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and thanks for watching.